Next up, we want to look at our profitability ratios. There are three profitability ratios we're going to look at: net profit margin, return on assets, and return on equity. Let's start with the net profit margin. Net profit margin is just our net income divided by sales. Looks at how much of each sales dollar makes it to the bottom line as far as income. Now when we're doing this, we want to start with our net income. Net income for Coca-Cola in that 2006 fiscal year, $5,080. Remember, we dropped the zeros off, so there were 3 zeros there, $5,080,000. And the initial information was reported in thousands. So Coca-Cola actually had net income in 2006 of a little over $5 billion. But here we cut off all the zeros that we didn't need, so we have 5,080. So that's our net income. Our sales level was that 24,088. Sales and revenues are the same thing. So we just want to take our net profit margin as net income, 5,080, divided by our sales, and now go to our calculator. Now here, our profitability ratios, all three of them, the net profit margin, return on assets, and return on equity, even though they show up as a decimal when we do the calculation, typically we express those as percentages. So this is 0.2108 or 0.2109 when we round it off, and we would write that out as 21.09%. So our net profit margin is 21.09%. That is an extremely high net profit margin. Typically, a lot of profit margins are somewhere in the 10% or less range. Profit margins above 10% are considered relatively high. Profit margins above 20% are extremely high, indicating that Coca-Cola is a very profitable business. Next, we want to look at return on assets. Our net income divided by assets. So we need our data sheet again. Net income was the 5,080. Total assets, 29,963. So we have our return on assets, and that is equal to that net income divided by our total assets. Go to the calculator. And again, it comes out as a decimal, 0.1695, but we're going to convert that to a percentage. So it would be 16.95% for our return on assets. The return on assets is going to be something that's very industry dependent. Some industries are asset intensive. They take a lot of assets, and those are going to have lower return on assets. Some industries are less asset intensive, and therefore they'll have higher levels of return on assets. Coca-Cola's 16.95 is a very comfortable return on assets. Not quite as impressive as their net profit margin, which indicates that Coca-Cola does have a few more assets tied up, but it's still a very good number overall, indicating a very profitable company. And lastly, return on equity. Here, instead of dividing net income by sales or assets, we're using common equity, which represents the investment made by the stockholders, how much capital that they have supplied the company. Net income again, 5,080. our stockholders' equity. This is taken from the balance sheet, the money supplied by common stockholders, 16,920. So our ROE, our return on equity, get out our calculator. And our return on equity is 30.02%. Should be noted that return on equity will almost always be higher than return on assets. It will never be lower than return on assets. The reason is that assets are financed by equity and liabilities. So as long as the company has some level of debt financing, then their equity is going to be less than their assets, and the return on equity will therefore be higher than return on assets. One of the ways to increase your return on equity is through leverage. The more debt financing you use, the more leverage you have, and the higher you can juice up that net income to a return to stockholders. I mentioned in the debt management ratios that our financial industry had tremendous amounts of leverage, and that was one of the things that led to the collapse in 2007 and 2008 of a lot of our large financial institutions. The reason they were using so much leverage is to try to boost up that return on equity to make higher returns for stockholders. Works great when the companies are profitable, but if anything bad happens, it can cause a lot of damage very quickly, and that's exactly what we saw in the financial crisis.